It's been history, actually. The Mystics finished the season as the #1 seed and are poised to make a run to not only make it to the finals, but to capture that first WNBA championship this year.
And aside from that, their 26-8 record is the best in franchise history. So when we talk about them being on the right side of history, this season has just been going so well for the Washington Mystics.
Right, and we're going to do all things about the Mystics and WNBA playoffs. And here with us via telephone to weigh in with her thoughts is the play-by-play voice for not only for the Washington Mystics, but the Capital City Go-Go, Meghan McPeak. And joining us in studio is Coach Jimmy Fly Hellmann of HSRN. Meghan, welcome to the Roundball Report.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Now, this was your, I understand that you worked with my good friend Chrissy Winter Scott, and was this your first year ever covering the WNBA?
Yes, it was. It was my first year getting the chance to cover the W, but over, the last 15, 16 years I've followed the WNBA. Originally being from Toronto, we would get whatever games came on. And I remember when the Comets went 4 straight.
Right.
So I'm going back to those days, and I've been following the W since then. So to now get the chance to actually cover these women was phenomenal, and I got lucky with the type of season that we've had.
That's what I was going to say. How special has it been for you to have your first season be a historic regular season for the Washington Mystics?
It's been great, and I wouldn't even just tie it to only the Mystics. I think it's probably been one of the best seasons the W has had when you think about the parity across the league. Unfortunately, injuries had to happen to some key names in the league, and losing a player like Maya Moore taking a sabbatical. But the silver lining to it was fans got the best season and the best version of every single team that they could get on a nightly basis. But getting to watch a historic season with the Mystics, with setting that franchise record of 26-8, and hopefully making another title run, and this time, sealing the deal with what they were so close to getting last year against Seattle, will be phenomenal.
Well, Meghan, just talk about the focus that the Washington Mystics have had to have, because they made it to the finals last year. They lost. They talked about running back before the season has even started, and now they're back in this place again to make another finals run.
Yeah, I think last year, and players like Tiana Hawkins, Natasha Cloud, Elena Deladon, they've all talked about it and how sour that feeling was with Seattle and the way that it happened. And then, you bring in a mindset like a Christy Tolliver, who has been to the WNBA finals and know what it takes to win a championship, and just, her being able to rally everybody around and say, we got close, and we know what it takes, and we know what we have to do. So now we know what we have to do going into next season. And even at halftime of last night's game against Chicago, Natasha alluded to it, and even alluding to the Chicago loss that they had about a week and a half ago. They owed them one, and they have been thinking about that loss since it happened, because they knew they let one slip away that they shouldn't have, and it gave Chicago confidence. Natasha said that they were celebrating that game as if it was the WNBA finals, and it was just a regular season game. So they have a very sour taste in their mouth from last season, and they're trying to get back to where they were, but complete the task at hand. And I think that experience from last season and some roster changes that Coach Tebow made will put them in the best position possible and getting that #1 seed. And now the WNBA finals has to go through DC, and if you have been to ESA at some of these games, it is not an easy place to play in. It is hard enough for me to hear, and Christy sits right beside me, and I've got a headset on, so I can't imagine what it's like on the floor.
So, Meghan, you talked about the roster addition. So talk about the impact of players like Tiana Hawkins and the reemergence of Emma Miesemann and the aerials, the development of Ariel Atkins and Ariel Powers.
I'll start with Tiana Hawkins, and potential Sixth Woman of the Year, one of the candidates, and we'll have to wait a few days to find out the postseason awards and who gets to take those home. But what she's been able to do over the course of going into last season and changing her body, and changed it even more coming into this season. Even, talking with her, I've been able to travel on a road trip with them. I was there with the team during the infamous earthquake game, and getting to know them. And I've offered her, I have snacks at my table during games, and I've offered her candy, and she won't eat it. She's very strict with her diet, because she knows how it affects her body, and she knows what she puts in her body, how it affects her on the floor, and just what she's been able to do and how her development has been over the past 2 seasons and coming into this year. And just even over the course of the season, how she's continued to improve, and fights through. There was a stretch in a couple games where it wasn't clicking for her. She's been battling the knee issue, and she continues to fight through it. So it's been amazing to see that. And then, with Emma Miesemann, and I know everyone's talking about Elena and the history that she made with the 50-40-90 club. Not a lot of people realize Emma technically should also be in that club, but unfortunately, because of international team duties with the Belgian national team, she missed it by 3 games for the qualifying. But nonetheless, in my eyes, she still did something that is nearly impossible, that when you think about it, 9 players, men's and women's, have been able to do. And that's something that going into this season, Coach T mentioned that not having Emma last season was a huge factor for them. And he thinks and thought going into the season that she was a deciding factor in why they didn't win, among other things as well. But having her, he felt that they would have had a different set of circumstances. And we've seen how impactful she is. In my opinion, she is just as dangerous and lethal as Elena Deladon on that floor. That defenses have to respect her the same way they do Elena. And then, the emergence of Ariel Atkins in her second year. You always worry about that second year drop off with players. She's had her struggles, as expected, but she has bounced back and battled. And, talking with UVA head coach Tina Thompson, who was on the staff at Texas, she has nothing but amazing things to say about Ariel Atkins. And we get to now watch it on the floor. And then you think about Ariel Powers and that trade with Dallas last year and bringing her in. I think the Mystics won that trade, and I don't think that there is a person who pays attention to the WNBA that would not agree with that statement. She has continued to improve. She has changed the way she plays the game, and it's all been purposeful. She does not make a move without purpose. And then you throw in the fact that Christy Tolliver goes down and she steps into the starting lineup and has the impact that they needed and expected from her as a starter in those games. It's been phenomenal. And I don't know when it comes to the qualifying if she can still be available for 6th Woman of the Year, but she definitely, prior to the start, was in the conversation for it.
Megan, Coach Jimmy Fly here. Let me just ask you, the Mystics get a little break here as these single elimination games start. The top seeds, Connecticut, the 2 seed, the Sparks, and then Las Vegas. If the Mystics had a matchup with any of those teams, is there one team in particular, after you've seen the whole season, that you think will give them the toughest matchup in a 5-game series?
Coach, I think it would be the Sparks, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. Connecticut has gotten the better of them. As we all know, they won the season series against the Mystics, which is why and how important that number 1 spot was for Washington to get it, to seal home court throughout and not have to go through Connecticut, because Connecticut and Mohegan Sun is one hell of a place to play. And any WNBA player, I think, this season will tell you that. But I think at this juncture of the year, LA. And I think them getting that 3 seed, I think it was the Friday games that they had to win, and a Vegas loss, which ended up happening, solidified them in the 3 spot. I think a lot of Mystics fans were smiling because now the only chance that they would see them, it would be in the WNBA finals. And, Las Vegas poses a really tough matchup as well, too, but I think it works more in Washington's favor. And they're also struggling as of late. to finish out the season. They've dropped a couple games that they shouldn't have dropped to close out. They did get their win yesterday to close out the regular season, but again, they've had some ups and downs too. And you never know how strong that ankle is for Asia Wilson, and that was a tough loss for them during the season. But if I'm the Mystics, I'm happy that the Sparks are in that 3 seed. But if that's the matchup that they get in the finals, I think it will be a historic WNBA finals.
And Megan, at this point in the season, things have been going pretty well for the Mystics, but we all know that they have some points that they need to fix or get together. For me personally, what I saw in yesterday's game, they gave up a lot of points in the paint. What would you say is your main concern for the Mystics that they need to kind of tighten up before they have their semifinals playoff series?
Well, I think that's a great point that you make, and that was a point of emphasis yesterday for Christie as well. Going into the game was the points in the paint, and you look at the bigs for Chicago and Stephanie Dolson, Stu Endor, and Cheyenne Parker, and what they were able to do inside. And when you look at the bracket, Chicago could be a semifinal matchup for the Mystics, just with the way the brackets have fallen in place. But I think the points in the paint could be an issue, especially when you look at, should they see a Las Vegas Aces team in a Liz Cambage and Asia Wilson? They like to do that high-low, a two-person game and kick it to each other and interchange as well, too, because they can both hit that foul line area jumper, but then can also both work down low in the post. Candace Parker, Nneka Ogwumike, that's another two big lineup that poses a problem inside when you think about the fact that they can both extend the floor but also can work off the dribble. So that's a point of emphasis. Also, too, I know turnovers were a big issue yesterday. They didn't turn the ball over at a high clip, but they were costly turnovers that allowed Chicago to get some momentum in that third quarter that we saw it get within 10 and then 8, and it got a little close for comfort. And that bench unit came in and really figured things out. So turnovers is another place of emphasis that I would look on. And just transition defense. You don't want a team to get out and run and get some quick, easy buckets, especially when you've got a lead on them or if you're down, because it can swing momentum. It can give them confidence that you don't necessarily want to have. And when they get up big on teams, like we saw against Los Angeles, what was it, about 2 weeks ago now, the last game, and then as well, too, that 40-plus point win against Connecticut, the final game of that season series. When they put their foot on the throat of their opponent and they send a message, that is when they are at their strength and they are at their most dangerous. I'd like to see them do that every game in the playoffs.
Okay, Megan, we're going to go to a quick break.